amongst the giant trees in Denmark. And soon I'll be visiting Denmark Heritage Cider. So stay tuned for another action-packed episode of Last Drinks Western Australia. We're continuing our journey down the west coast of Australia, and after leaving Margaret River, we're heading even further south to the Great Southern region. Home to dramatic coastlines and ancient forests, it's the perfect destination for those wanting to take in some natural beauty. Some of these red tingle trees are over 400 years old and get up to 16 metres in circumference. There's a suspended 600-metre long walkway, along with a meandering footpath, so you can take in these trees from any vantage point. Next up, I'm heading to the hills to Denmark Heritage Cider Company, where it's all about apples, from branch to bottle. I'm meeting Stuart out in the orchard to learn more about his approach to cider.
It's about 99.9% of cider in Australia is made out of eating apples or eating apple fruit concentrate. And that's what makes us different, because we're growing cider apples. Our cider is made out of apples which were designed, harvested, selected over hundreds of years to make cider.
So they're totally different to those apples you'd find in the store to eat?
Yes, they are. The way in which we grow these orchards, the way in which these orchards are pruned, very open, that allows us to use the native yeasts, the wild yeast. So it gives us a very, very different style of fermentation, where we're not adding something like a yeast, a champagne yeast. Most ciders would be made using a champagne yeast. We're using the yeast which you actually find on the skins of the apples.
Wow, so when you talk about native yeast, what exactly does that mean? That it's floating around naturally in the air?
That's exactly right. There's a lot of interest in it right now. First Nations people are getting involved in making wines using indigenous yeasts. You've got the huge interest in the sour beers and the farmhouse wines among the craft beer drinking community. And then you've got all of the natural wine drinkers, all of your trendy wine bars there and all that kind of stuff. They're all drinking their natural wine. We have to harvest the fruit. Mm-hmm. The fruit is cider apples, not eating apples, and then it's a native yeast or a natural yeast ferment.
And what about cider in general? I mean, how did you come to fall in love with cider?
I grew up in Ciderland, which is basically the southwest of England. Southwest is where a lot of cider is made and drunk. And you grow up surrounded by the whole of the cider culture. Even as a child, you go into the orchards and you steal apples and you throw them at your mates and whatever, and that's called scrumping. And then as you get a little bit older, you get involved in the apple harvest. You're looking for a bit of pocket money. So you go and you're picking the apples and you go and see them being pressed. Of course, you steal a little bit when you're a little bit younger. Yeah. And then as you get a little bit older, then you will cycle out to the local farm. And they've got these big barrels, and then they have honesty tins. And you sit there with your mates and you drink cider, you drink scrumpy. It's you grow up with it.
Yeah, it just seems like it's part of your culture.
It is, very much. And that's the culture in the southwest of England. In the north of France, they have their own cider culture. Most people don't realise that most fine cider actually comes from the north of France, Normandy and Brittany. It's huge. They don't grow grapes. They grow apples, and they make the most wonderful ciders. Everybody just assumes France is wine. Well, it isn't. It's cider as well. And Europe's waking up to that. The UK's waking up to it. Sydney is waking up to it. There is this interest in European style of cider.
Don't go away. More Last Drinks after the break.
Okay, so we're going to do this the French way.
Okay.
It's our Savage Scrumpy, so it's a wild yeast ferment. First thing you'll get the smell, and that's the wild yeast.
Smells delicious.
So you get that, and then you get the taste, and it's smooth, it's rounded, and it's funky.
Love it. That's not like any other cider I've had. I can tell what you mean about apple wine. And if anyone was used to drinking cider that's overly sweet, this is not. This is nice and fresh.
That's right. And it's dangerous because it's 8% alcohol.
What?
It's 8% alcohol.
Okay, no, I did not expect that. It does not taste like 8%.
And then, of course, there's no additives or preservatives in it, so you don't even get a hangover.
This is all too
So
good.
you can do it again the next day.
Oh, that is good. Very tasty, very smooth. Bet you're jealous. There's plenty more to try, so it's over to the bar.
We're going to kick off with what we call our fizzy apple. And to make the fizzy apple, we take our scrumpy. It goes into this little pressure-containing bottle. We add a bit of sugar to it. Inside the bottle, you get bubbles, a little bit more alcohol, and a little bit of sediment. Bottle conditioned, in-bottle fermentation, whatever you want to call it. That's how you do it. So it's a naturally sparkling cider.
So in each bottle, it's bubbling away.
Each bottle is bubbling away, and
Lovely.
you have to have special bottles to do that. You can't use any old bottle. You can't use a stubby. So these bottles, they'll hold 60, 70 psi without any trouble at all, and the tops won't blow off. This one is particularly nice because it's got many layers, it's dry, and it's got a lovely creamy finish associated with these little bubbles.
Love
So you see,
that.
we get tiny little bubbles. If you look at the bubbles in here, you'll see they're really small. They're really tiny. In your New World ciders, your eating apple ciders, because they're sweet, they're a little bit thick. They're syrupy, so the bubbles are big. It gives you a coarse mouthfeel. So this style of cider gives you a nice, fine, creamy mouthfeel.
So these bubbles are contributing to the end cream
That's
feel.
right, to the creamy texture in the mouth.
All right. That is really refreshing. And I can see what you mean. It's still crisp. I can still recognize that scrumpiness that I liked from the first one. But those bubbles give it that extra edge and an extra dimension.
They do. And just have a little nibble on one of these saucissons breton.
Okay.
It's a galette with one of the Denmark butchers' awesome pork sausages. It's a special recipe which they created for us to try and replicate a Breton sausage.
Wow.
So that with the lovely apple flavors in this and the earthiness of the galette and then that beautiful pork just goes so well together.
That is delicious. And yeah, a great pairing to have with this.
Yep.
I could really kick back at a picnic with this.
Exactly.
Eat this all day.
Exactly.
And how many varieties of cider apples do you grow?
We've got 15 different varieties here. They're divided into 3 main types. We have sharp apples. Those are very high in tannins. So that's equivalent to your wine grape that would be something like your Merlot grape. Then we've got the bitter-sweet apples. A lot of those are cooking apples. They make a really nice apple pie. They've got a very, very sharp apple flavor. And then we've got our sweet apples. And our sweet apples you can eat, but they have no shelf life. So you won't find them in the supermarkets because supermarkets want apples that they can keep for a year at least.
So that must mean everything is very fresh.
It's absolutely fresh. Our fruit can sit at the winery for about 2 weeks maximum, but after that period of time, really we feel that it has to go. It has to get through the crusher. It'll keep longer than grapes, but it certainly does have a bit of a shelf life to it.
And how did you choose the varieties?
You're very limited in Australia because of the very strict quarantine rules. So there are only a little over 600 varieties of apple varieties in Australia, totally. So it's quite a limited selection that we had to choose from. We got 6 varieties from the research station in Manjimup, and then the other 9 came from a research station in Tasmania.
Lovely. And when you were selecting them, although, you know, limited by what you could get, were you thinking about the end product? Did you have in mind recipes that you wanted to make?
It's a third. That's the blend. It's 33% of the sweet apples, and then 33% of the bitter sweets and 33% of the sharps, and that produces a blended cider. So you do have people who are looking at varietal ciders, which is where they're looking at doing a single variety, but for our tastes, myself and the winemaker's tastes, we like the complexity of a blend.
What are you looking for when it's time to pick? Do they have to be a certain size, and are they all ripening at the same time, or?
No, they don't. They ripen over a period of probably around about 4 weeks. And I don't know when they're ripe. It's my wife who tells me when they are ripe.
Okay.
And she's got this technique where she can flick the apple, and she can tell by how it sounds when she flicks it whether it's ripe or not.
That's how you know.
That's how we know.
I love how it's so much more in tune with nature, and even the shape of the trees themselves, it looks like you're letting them spread wide.
We are, and we have to do that. If we don't let the air in, then we're going to get a lot more of the fungi and bacteria. They love it when it's wet. So we've got to keep our trees dry. And to keep them dry, you need sunshine and you need wind. So they've got to be open to get the sunshine and the wind. If you don't do that, you're going to end up spraying. Well, as soon as you end up spraying, you're killing those yeasts. Those yeasts are exactly what we rely on for our fermentation.
So you don't spray at all?
No.
Wow.
No, not in the canopy. No, we can't, because we'll knock out those native yeasts.
Yeah. Wow. It's really impressive, because not a lot of people do that.
No, it's not easy.
No. Stick around. More cider after the break.
While filming Last Drinks WA, our crew chose to stay at Karma Chalets. Nestled on a hillside under a canopy of eucalyptus, Karma's 10 unique cedar chalets are secluded by lush bushland in the stunning Great Southern region of Western Australia. Perfect for any visit, Karma Chalets has options to suit a couple's romantic weekend away or exploring the Denmark region with your family or friends. Enjoy those cosy winter days by the fire or explore dramatic coastal scenery. Whatever you're feeling, Karma Chalets has you sorted. For inquiries or bookings, visit karmachalets.com.au.
I'm at Denmark Heritage Cider Co. in the Great Southern, and owner Stuart is taking me through his pet nat.
As far as we know, this is the only one of its kind in Australia.
Wow.
Because you do have other cider makers producing pet nats, but they're actually made using that technique where you add sugar to a fully fermented cider.
Okay.
Whereas a pet nat should be young, should be really young. It's only about 2 weeks into the fermentation, you bottle it. So you're freezing a lot of those young, fresh green apple flavors in the bottle. So you end up with something that's got a lot more fruit fragrance. So you're not getting the flavors of the matured ciders. What you are getting is an awful lot more of those young smells, flavors.
Oh, it does. It smells nice and fresh, and yeah, it can almost smell the crispness as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's even a lighter color. Lighter. This is great with a picnic food, and we've got here some of these Albany Akoya oysters, and you're here in the Great Southern. This is a local oyster, sea-grown, fresh, and you won't find it in many places.
Very special.
So it's a very special oyster.
And why have you chosen to pair it with this?
Because the sourness goes really nicely with the fresh flavors in this. We go for that French idea of food with alcohol. So the French would always be having their cider with something to eat. So let's try one of these little Akoyas.
Oh, that is delicious. I love that apple cider that you've marinated in. It's so good. It just brings it up a little bit more.
Yeah.
And pairs so nicely.
Yeah.
And what an easy drink.
A bit too easy. a huge amount of this gets sold at lunchtime venues because people are looking for something which is light, it's fresh.
Yeah, perfect. Cheers.
We were looking for some farmland to grow apples and to make cider, was what we really wanted to do, because there wasn't any in Australia. So we felt that it was, at that time, that it was a really great thing to introduce into Australia, this style of cider. It would be something that would be very new, that people would actually be interested in.
Definitely. So then when did you start planting here?
2008, 2009, our first trees went in. We had our first harvest in 2013, and that was a scrumpy. It was a very nice scrumpy, but it didn't leave the farm. It stayed on the farm and among our friends in the area.
Yeah.
That's who drank that. 2014 was our first sparkling cider vintage. 2015, we were starting to get some volume off the trees. And 2 years later, after that 2015 harvest, we had a product that we could really take to market. So we opened our cellar door in 2017.
How lovely. And then you got to spread this cider culture to all new people that would never have experienced it.
Well, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
What really pleases us more than anything is people who come to the cellar door, and I love it when somebody says to me, I don't like cider.
It's a challenge.
And they'll say, I don't like cider, it's too sweet. So I'll just try this. And I'll try it. And they'll go, oh, it doesn't taste like cider, does it? And you go, no, it doesn't taste like cider, it's entirely different. And if they go away with a couple of bottles of cider, then I feel very good about that.
I think we've done a good job.
We've introduced them with a new taste and a new idea about what a drink can be. It's a mission.
Well, I'm definitely feeling thirsty. Let's wander back to the bar and taste a couple more.
We're into a little bit of a different style of cider, and this is what we do here is we use something called the method traditionnel, where we add sugar to make it bubbly, but then the cider lies on its side. It lays on its side for at least 1 year, but in this case it was 4 years. So during that period of time, lying on its side, the yeast, which is lying on the bottom, and the cider kind of mix together, and you end up with an awful lot more complex flavors. That's a very French way of doing it, very Normandy style, or Normandy or Brittany style. And then at the end of that period of time, we remove the sediment. So it's a nice clean cider, but it's got a lot more complexity, a lot more aging and maturing to it. So it's a sparkling cider, obviously, but this one, after the pet nat, which will lack that complexity, this one delivers a lot more.
And when you say complexity, is it a combination of more rounded flavors with crisp? What makes it so complex?
It's the aging process that's making it more complex. I mean, it's a year in vat before it goes into the bottle, and then another 4 years inside the bottle. You'll find that champagnes, which use the same technique, they're aged 3 years, and that's how when they're called a champagne. I say it's like champagne because champagne actually is the child of cider.
And this might be a silly question, but how did you come up with the length of time to leave it? Is that something that's known, or was it experiment, or is it?
Experiments. I mean, we started with stuff that was 1 year old, and it was 4 years old by the time we took the sediment out. And the longer you leave it, the more complex the flavors become, because that interaction between the yeast and the wine in the bottle is what you're looking for.
I just love everything you're doing here with cider, because it's really elevating it to a lot of people that might not think that it's capable or can have these taste profiles. You're really taking it there.
Well, we hope so. This style of cider in France has been absolutely going crazy. In the UK as well. Basically, the Asian markets are crying out for it and they can't get it, which is why we're starting to export to Asia.
Sending a little bit of Denmark there.
Yep, cheers.
Cheers. Delicious, and I can really taste what you're talking about, comparing it to the pet nat. It is a lot richer, there's a lot more things going on. It's got that, still a little bit of the sweetness to it, but that complexity to it.
Yeah. And try one of these little acquoyers, which is a different way of cooking them. With these we smoke them, and we smoke them using our apple wood. So this is the prunings from our trees. And then we just take our little Accoya oysters and we smoke them in that applewood smoke, so they get that lovely richness of applewood.
Oh, lovely.
So try that with one of these.
Okay. Very tasty. I can see why you've chosen the smoked for it, to bring out that complexity in it. Goes really nice.
We call this one our crowd pleaser for a reason. It's hard to be offended by it.
Yep.
Okay, so the last of the ciders we're going to taste today is, we call it dark and complicated because it's got an awful lot more going on than any of our other ciders. Now, it isn't for the faint-hearted. It's got a fruit start and then it moves into those deep tannins. So you've got an awful lot more flavour going on than any of the ciders that you've tasted so far. So it's got a real nice, funky finish. So same idea as the 17. It's a natural sparkling, but it is very grown up.
Well, I think you've prepped me well, because on our journey so far, we've gone from those light, virgin, fresh, right through to where we are now with this dark and stormy.
Dark and stormy, I love it. I'm going to change the board.
Smells very interesting.
It's like sticking your head in a tree.
It is. It's very drinkable.
It's smooth.
It's very smooth. Yeah, the apple flavour's still quite up front, but a nice taper off.
If you're cooking with shaved truffle or truffle oil, it's pretty hard to pair with that because it's such a dominant flavour. This goes beautifully with it.
Well, thank you so much, Stuart. This has been an amazing adventure, and I've discovered some new ciders that I love.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Wow, and just like that, we've come to the end of our 3-week journey down the coast of Western Australia. It truly has been breathtaking. For one final stop, it's a short drive to Denmark's own William Bay National Park, home to the stunning Elephant Rocks. Said to resemble a herd of elephants exploring the shallow waters, these huge granite boulders have a pretty spectacular view. We've come to the end of our journey, and what an amazing place to finish off. I've been Madeleine Culp, and this has been Last Drinks Western Australia.